9:30, I call our city council work committee meeting to session. We have 3 different items tonight. Committee meetings, then we'll have a work session, and then we'll have a special council meeting, then we'll go into executive session for. We'll begin with a Tourism Visitors Bureau Committee, Ms. Durfee.
Actually, Michaela is going to come up and present tonight for me.
Hello, Council. So last year we funded the Joe Beavers Junior Superstar Roping event last spring, and they have reapplied. So I'm just going to go over the staff report here. Established in 2010, the roping event will take place on March 29th through 31st, 2024 at the 377 Arena. The amount of hot funds requested this year is $10,000. Last year, the City of Stephenville funded Joe Beavers Junior Superstar Roping in the amount of $5,000, which took place April 7th through 9th in 2023. And keep in mind, last year they also applied for $30,000, and we granted them $5,000. This event will host 450 plus contestants, estimating the attendance to be at about 1,000. The impact of this event will be measured by the number of entries and stall rentals at 377 Arena, along with tourism data analytics gathered from our new resource, Datify. Staff recommends funding the Joe Beavers Junior Superstar Roping event in the amount of $5,000. And fiscal impact, this event will host 450 plus families that will eat, shop, and potentially stay in hotels for 2 to 3 days. And alternatives would be council denies staff recommendation of hot funds application, or council reduces the staff recommendation amount of hot funds granted. Another tidbit of information about this event from last year is that they had 150 rooms booked for 3 nights, and so the La Quinta, the Best Western Plus, Hampton Inn, and Motel 6 were sold out. Do y'all have any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
So hot funds last year off the project, we collected how much? How much would our hot funds have been on that?
150 rooms.
At $150 or so? About 800 bucks.
22,500. 150 rooms at $150 a piece.
Okay, but well, how much we get? 7 cents off that, I think?
I bumped probably somewhere between 150, 180, maybe about 2,000
So we collect about 2,000 off the hot funds.
off direct hot funds, and then of course the
Any
indirect
tax.
from any retail
Diesel.
or
Yeah.
restaurant, those things.
Okay. And what was their attendance last year?
Their attendance, they had about 1,000 people.
So it'd be they're going to repeat what they did last time.
Any other questions?
We don't have any estimate on what our sales tax revenue was during that time, do we? Do we have any estimate of what our sales tax revenue was during that time?
We could give you the data on what March as a whole was, but no, I don't
Not
have
this.
anything specific for those 3 days.
Yeah, no problem, I was just wondering.
Y'all have that software. Did y'all do that, run that for them, that information?
We did not for last year's, but moving forward, we can absolutely do that.
Is that like a geofencing
Yes,
type
sir.
thing? Okay.
That'd be good.
Any other questions? Then I would make a motion that we do the $5,000. Sorry. Hot funds for the Joe Beaver Junior Superstars Roping.
I'll second. I can't second, I'm sorry.
Hey, you're on the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, you-
I thought it was.
So, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So I guess that will go to council with a positive recommendation for the $5,000.
sponsorship.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Anything
That's
else?
all.
Okay,
No,
Lon?
sir, that's all.
Okay. I'd like to have Darren Trossel come up and give us a briefing on this Synergy Sports that we've been looking at, to give everybody just a briefing on it.
All right, so what's before you on the agenda tonight is Synergy Sports Feasibility Study. So Synergy Sports is basically a sports consulting company. They consult with municipalities all around the country in order to build sports centers of all different types. So they've built a bunch of different things. The current project they have going in the state of Texas is it's a multi-use facility in Odessa. So it's on about 100 acres that was donated to the city. It's 12 baseball fields, 10 soccer fields, and I believe a 10-court gymnasium with an indoor track facility that can be brought in as well. So they've consulted with the city of Odessa for the last year on this project, and I believe they started in April and they break ground this month or next month. So they're a public-private partnership company, so they do P3 projects. So this is just the initial phase of what are we capable of doing in our city and what are we capable of affording in our city. And that initial feasibility study is $15,000.
Yep.
And it takes about 6 weeks to complete. And that'll give us kind of a glimpse of what our competitors are in this market, what we're able to afford to do in this market, what our needs are in this market. Every time we've met with him, he says the same thing. Texas doesn't need a lot more baseball fields. They've got a lot of baseball fields. He said, but there are other needs. And we need to see what your needs are and what market, where are we pulling from, who are we pulling from, what do we need to see here? So that's kind of the gist of it. We've sat in on several meetings with him, so
Yeah.
Coach Reisman sat in with him, Jason King sat in with him.
So I've sat in a Zoom with this company. I'm impressed with the way they've done things. I've been through a lot of P3s in my time at Tarleton. I really think that we need to look at this seriously for this community. We need things for our youth in this community. And we need to step up in areas to help our youth in this community. I think that they're our future.
And I haven't just priced it out with one company, so I did meet with another company, more local Texas company, that I want to say they do similar stuff. They're not a P3 company, so they're not going to actually physically do any of the project for you. But they do the studies and the research and all that stuff. And I will tell you that I shied away and steered away from that one because I didn't think it would get us as far. It would just get us the research data, and it was $30,000 for them to come in and do the research. So I believe $15,000 with Synergy, based on what they've done throughout the country, is a pretty good deal for this.
Well, they will come in and do an evaluation.
So they will be he'll be boots on grounds here. So once we sign a contract with them, they will physically be here. And once they have results at the end of their 6-week process, they will be boots on ground again to present that data to whoever y'all wanted to present it to in whatever fashion you want it presented.
We have to remember, what happened in Odessa doesn't necessarily mean what's gonna happen in
Yeah, I
Stephenville,
mean,
Texas.
we're not gonna do what Odessa's doing probably.
I mean, we're
but-
looking at what's best for Stephenville, what fits Stephenville, and what they think, what we're looking at here, so.
And he was very upfront, I know in the
Yes,
Zoom
me too.
I had, that, hey, I come in and do these, and sometimes they don't pencil out to,
Can happen.
to doing a project. But one of the things that, whether that happens or not, I think just that needs assessment
I agree.
of the programming needs will be valuable to us moving forward. Even if this doesn't pencil out and there's not a project to do, I think that programming needs will help SPARD.
It lets us know where we
Moving
stand and what we
forward.
think. We all think we need something, I think. I think a lot of us think, we need something for our community. This gives us some data on what exactly that looks like and what it would cost you and then how it would be funded and all those kind of things. So it takes a look at a lot of different things.
It shows a positive vision for us, and what the possibilities that we need to look at in the future.
At this point, we're not asking for additional funds for his budget. It'll just be shifting some of the capital money that was for a bathroom project that we put in the budget that is going to end up being larger in scope than we had anticipated. And so we won't complete that in this fiscal year anyway. So we'll just if council is okay with it, we would just reappropriate some of those funds from that project to this one.
During this feasibility study, will this company be identifying, lands, city-owned and privately owned?
We had,
for,
we had brief talks with them about that in the last meeting, and I think, Brandon Huckabee was in the first meeting. I don't think you could be there that day, but we looked at some of that stuff, and that's one of the reasons he wants to be boots on the ground. He wants to come here and kind of see everything, get a lay of the land, and understand what he's looking at. And through the process, he'll kind of identify, this is kind of the acreage you need. And so, do you have any current land that the city owns, or do we have partners that maybe the city could do business with, that it would elevate their land? We asked questions about hotels, because obviously we have a need for hotels here. He does have some inroads with hotel companies, and typically after they break ground, he said a lot of times you're gonna see a hotel that wants to locate right next to this because it is a tournament venue. This is a sports tourism play. It's not just, hey, what can we do for our kids in Stephenville? It gets us that, but it is a sports tourism play. This company has inroads with companies like AAU Sports, and they do a lot of things with AAU nationally. So there's just a lot of different facets to it.
I think it's a great idea. I know, personally, we travel all the time, everywhere else, and it'd be nice for more people to travel this way. So I think this is a step in the right direction for sure.
And I'm anxious to see when they do their evaluation, what they bring us our way, just besides a baseball field. What else do they see that we need here?
Well, I think we've had talks with him, or I've had talks with Jason several times about, it can't just be basketball, volleyball, right? It's gotta look beyond that. We have wrestling coming to Tarleton, that's gonna be a big thing. We already have some youth wrestling here, but wrestling tournaments are a big thing. This venue can host those kind of things. We just had, a taekwondo tournament here. Those kind of things are what fit in this. We think the track that they're doing Odessa, the indoor track, is a good fit for here because we have an NCAA indoor track program. And so there's a lot of different things we want Jason to look at through the process.
So, can I say one thing?
Sure, yeah.
I just like the idea just for, like you said, we're not Odessa and we can't do it today, but
Right.
at least it gives us a roadmap for this is where
Future.
we're heading.
The future.
Yes, I like this idea.
Well, so one of the things you probably need to understand about it, this is not gonna be funded, this isn't a bond deal.
No.
This is funded as a sports tourism venue. It has to pay for its own bills to pencil out
Right.
off the back of sports tourism.
But that's what they'll come in and look at, making
Yes,
sure that they feel like
look
that
at
can
what-
happen.
What we're capable of holding, what we're capable of doing.
Right.
One of our deficiencies will probably be hotels for that, because we're splitting that with Tarleton, and, we know we have some hotel things that need to be done here, but hopefully this gets us a step closer to some of that too.
Darren, is there room for community input in this, or is this just a high level?
In the initial stages, to not muddy the waters, I think Jason tries to steer clear of that, is my understanding, so that there's not all this input. And I think we've gotten bogged down in that before, where it's like, oh, we need this in it, and we need this in it, and it starts to become,
It grows.
it grows too much. So he tries to really look at what pencils out, and what does all his research he's able to pull from tell us we need.
And they
So-
seem to be a very experienced group. Very
Then it
experienced.
starts, from there, once we kind of know where we're at, then it starts to gather input from other players that y'all decide need to be at the table. And then he starts to look at those things and do they pencil out, does that fit? So,
I think we have a lot of the community, suggestions and input in our parks, master plan, development that we were working on too with Mitch, correct?
I mean, there's input about facility stuff in there, what we need, pickleball courts
So we
or
can-
whatever.
Pick and choose the information we want at that point.
And
I
he
would
builds
think.
these in a very, like, everything I've looked at that he's built is done in a very, like, multi-use manner. It's not just basketball, not just volleyball, what things can we be in here? And so it could be things, he can break these things down and you could have an RV show inside of it. So he'll make it in a fashion where you can pull those things in and get them on the floor and have indoor shows like that too. So it could be convention space as well.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that, that we take the feasibility study from Synergy Sports to a full council. I think that's February 5th for the full council vote.
Second. Me too.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thanks, sir. Mr. McClinton, you got the bundle of it tonight.
Yeah, I don't know how Steve pawned stuff off on me tonight. He had to have.
Nick was getting jealous, so it
Oh.
was.
So,
It wasn't getting all the
Public
love.
Works, we do have several items on our agenda tonight. The first one involves, professional engineering service proposal. And Mr. Williams, give us the skinny on LJA.
Yes, sir. So LJA, we've done some research on them. We actually met with them at TML and then were impressed and had a meeting with them internally up here specifically to look at our plan review services. And really, really impressed with their stormwater capability and the two individuals that we would be dealing with on a regular basis for these plan reviews. The company's over 50 years old. I didn't know that originally. They've got 50 offices in over 9 states, so 25 of those offices are in Texas. And so they have a really deep bench as far as resources go. But as we found out, even with big companies, it's all about who you deal with. So we met with them individually and were very impressed with what level of service we think we'll get for plan review. The review services would continue to be on a 7 to 14 day turnaround time. Obviously, those get shorter the more reviews that you have. The rates were actually comparable or less than what's being charged to developers now. And so recall, those are straight pass-throughs to the developers for development projects. Happy to answer any questions. I did put this in front of the city attorney. He did review and approve of this contract.
What are the current turn times for our current consulting company?
It is about 10 days.
About 10 days. Okay.
So
And
7 to
it's
14 days is
comparable.
pretty common. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, Nick, we approved some additional money for Freeze Nichols.
We did, yes, sir.
So how does that get resolved if we move in this direction?
So essentially, every project that had been started with them would be finished with F&I, and then new projects that would come on board would be started and finished with LJA. Any of those funds allocated after those projects have been completed with F&I would be shifted back over into the LJA account, but it's all the same account number. So that's a wash, but good question, yes, sir.
Any other questions for Nick on this one? And I think this does wash our hands in a timely manner from F&I, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good job.
What is the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we bring the LGA engineering proposal in front of council for full approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we move this forward with a positive recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Proceed to vote. All those say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That will move forward to the council with a positive recommendation. Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir. The second item on the agenda is a stormwater rate analysis. So we talked about this in our budget discussions last year. We've done some research and we found a company called Raftellus, and they had an extremely, they were extremely impressive, I'll put it that way. They actually were recommended to me by a company as I was walking around the exhibit hall at TML, and as I talked to more and more people, I found out how big a company they are and what they've been doing. So they've been doing these rate studies since 1995, and kind of their specialty is working with municipal and local governments. They say on their website they work with over 600 local governments just in the last year alone doing these kinds of rate studies. And so big government municipalities as down to smaller government, local governments as well. So we brought them in. Monica and I sat down and had an interview with them, and if she was impressed, I was impressed. And what you have here before you is a proposal for them to perform this rate analysis. It has a couple of key components. One is looking at our short and long-term goals. We have a lot of capital projects that we need to address, and specifically, they look at the short and long term, but they come up with a specific 5-year plan that meets our very specific 5-year goals in our capital program. So that's one big part of it. The other part is a financial rate model, a tool that they develop that we can use on our own after they're gone. We can input numbers and kind of see how those rates may change revenues and debt service and that sort of thing. So excited about that. The last part of their proposal is a review of our codes as well. So looking at the amount of interaction they have with local governments, they said they absolutely have some recommendations for our code of ordinances on how rates are calculated, and so they can make some recommendations to us on that as well. The turnaround timeframe is for next budget year, but their financial plan would be due in May, and so we hope to have some numbers that we can actually talk about relevantly for this next budget year. And this contract also went before the city attorney. He did approve of it.
Any questions for Nick?
Would this be applicable to the water, to the tool that we would have? Could it be used across the utility funds, or is it unique to stormwater?
You know, I think so, because the capital project itself is just a description and numbers to input. So I think that it has a real possibility of implementing the same way.
Just to, I guess, even to potentially fact check.
Well, it's not going to be for water and sewer, so we would have to look at that on our
This-
own afterwards.
Right, but the tool that we have now, now we are armed with a tool
Yes.
that we can begin to do that analysis on our own?
I would tell you that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that on my own without having some help
Yeah.
to look at that, the water and sewer rates.
Well, you wouldn't have cost estimates, I guess, internally without leaning on someone in that field in terms of capital project expenditures, setting rates properly, and planning out that
Right.
process.
Well,
But
and I would rely on folks like yourself to help with the debt service.
And I don't know that the tool they create on the stormwater rate analysis, it depends on some of the formulas, because stormwater rate analysis is a totally different animal from.
Sure.
So they gave us a report, a template to use, as an idea on the water and sewer, so we have that. But I'll tell you, it's more complicated, and it's probably something that you're still gonna want some assistance from somebody, even though we have the template. And I imagine this is gonna be the same thing. It'll be specific to storm, and they're gonna give us a template, that we could then probably, try to go through. But I think Nick and I are both going, there are people that specialize in this that are probably a lot smarter than both of us, that we would still want some assistance in the future.
perfect.
And the one part I forgot to mention, we had a $50,000 budget, and it's proposed at $46,890, so just under budget.
And I just want to add, this is something we've been talking about for several months, going back into last year's budget. And this, we've got to get started. We got to take the first step, and that's what this is. We've got to, we're so far underwater, pardon the pun, with stormwater that we've got to make a move. And I think this is a good first step to try to get us at least going down that road. With that, if there are no more questions, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Committee Chair, I move that we approve the proposal as presented with Reftalis
Right, tell us.
for stormwater rate analysis services.
Second.
Moved and seconded to move this forward to the council with a positive recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That will move forward with a positive recommendation. Mr. Williams, you're getting there.
Yes, sir, halfway through. This third item is for the Upper Leon River Municipal Water District. It really is just to make sure that we're all aware that the number that we budgeted for use of that treated surface water is exactly what the charges are. And so, because it's just over $174,000, we want to bring it to everybody's attention and let you know that it came in exactly on budget. That's it.
Good job.
And so we're looking for a recommendation to authorize us to pay those bills.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the Upper Leon River Municipal Water District raw water charges in the amount of $174,097.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we take this forward to the full council with a positive recommendation to accept this Upper Leon report as it's been presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That will move on. Long Street.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams.
Long Street is coming along nicely. We've had a couple of change orders, and I'm happy to run through these, but the main takeaway is that we had this change order number 4, which was an $86,500 savings when the geotechnical company was going through and taking shots along Long Street before the project started. It just so happened everywhere they took bore samples, they came back with a clay subsurface. And so in order to treat clay, use a lime stabilization. Well, what happened was when we started to rip up that subsurface, we found a tremendous amount of rock. And you guys have heard me say it before, the soils in Erath County, they marble like a ribeye steak. And when you go down Long Street and we found this tremendous amount of rock, what you do to stabilize that is you use a cement-treated subbase. And so there's a tremendous savings from that particular change order. This change order in front of us really is 2 pieces. The Public Works side of this for the Long Street project is pretty small. It's really just taking that sidewalk and moving it from behind the cars that park in front of the rec hall to in front of the cars that park in the rec hall. And we thought, gosh, that makes a lot of sense to not put people behind cars. The big part of this is $58,000 of the 65 is to replace those steps in front of the rec hall. When we do that, the grading and the way that entrance to the rec hall has been added onto in the past in the parking lot, the grades in order to make that ADA compliant have a tremendous amount of work to do, and that's what you see here in front of you. So while it's not technically part of the Long Street project, the Parks Department would reallocate funds from that previously mentioned bathroom renovation project to take care of the steps in front of the rec hall.
Any questions on this one? Fairly straightforward. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I make the motion that we move the Long Street change order 5 onto council for full, with a positive recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we forward this to the full council with a positive recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move on.
Harbin Drive improvements, so we have another change order to discuss here, and we've run through these change orders previously. This newest change order, number 7, is for a traffic signal controller at the intersection of Washington and Harbin. And the real issue stems from having the traffic signals shown on the plans, but in the bid specifications, it just was not accounted for at all. It just wasn't addressed. And so while TxDOT did a review on it, we can't say TxDOT missed it. Certainly they looked at it and saw that it needed to be there, but they didn't go through our bid specifications. And so when Jay Mills came to us and said, hey, how do we get paid for this? Well, what we did, the takeaway here is we found another error, an oversight in the design. The good news is last year we allocated funds from our annual maintenance project, and those funds will cover the cost of this oversight and still leave us with about $104,500 left for the remainder of the project. That's it in a nutshell. I can dive deeper if you like.
Questions on this one for Nick?
This is to get across, to know when to walk.
It's actually for the traffic signals themselves.
Okay. So this is the TxDOT portion of,
Yes, sir.
this is their traffic lights, but
Yes, sir.
updating them?
Correct. And so those turn lanes needed a brain to tell them when to change colors, and that's what was not accounted for in the bid specifications.
So when we make improvements to the walkways, TxDOT requires us to update those, or are those walking signals?
No, those will belong to TxDOT to maintain, which is what we want.
TxDOT doesn't pay for it.
We did ask.
What was your answer?
It was polite.
It's kind of like us with developers on public infrastructure.
Yeah.
So the total difference is?
The total impact is
41.
48,718. The change order itself is 41,500, and then we had a few quantities that we're going to overrun inside the existing line items. The 41,000 is the newer piece that's not accounted for at all.
And the 104 is less this number, or is it before or after this number?
It's after.
After.
The 104,552 is what we have left after this change order is executed, and then after the total impact of the change order at 48,718.75.
And what's how much longer have we got on this project?
I need to go over the days again with the contractor, but I'm going to tell you that I feel confident that it'll be done before the summer. And what I told people previously was, by the time kids get out of school, this road should be ready to go.
Okay. Is the 104 going to last till then?
I expect I'll be back with some other things.
That was a good political answer right there.
Did you notice how Jason reacted to that comment?
He's aware.
Which is why we did what we did with.
Here's Nichols.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions for Nick on
I
this?
guess, so fund balance is where this is all coming from.
Street maintenance.
Right. The street maintenance that we allocated last year to take care of the overruns, that allocation from last year takes care of this oversight.
This one and the
Yes, sir.
Long
And-
Street,
Pardon me?
the Long Street one as well, or?
The Long Street is still within budget, even with that change order.
Okay,
We're still way under the project budget there.
okay.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I make the motion to approve, or to send positive recommendation to council for change order number 7 in the amount of 41,450,
48, yes, sir, 41,540.
540, 41,540.
Second.
Do we, just for clarification, do we need to include that bottom line number as a part of this, or?
No, sir.
We good, okay. Motion and second, any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That will move forward to the council with a positive recommendation. And Nick, let's see, I don't think I want you to run just yet. Well, I guess you probably can, or sit close.
Okay, I'll hang
I'm
tight.
gonna- I'm gonna address this last item here. So, a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago, everybody, I'm assuming, got the letter from the woman over there dealing with the Harbin Drive stuff. Nick and his crew went out there. That was smoothed over very quickly. But she had to write a letter and raise a stink to get some action done on something that probably should have never happened to begin with. So I was talking to Nick about that. I've had several instances where contractors have come into Stephenville and used a piece of property that I have for their storage yard, their work yard, and I've had to chase them off. And if you get after them, they'll leave. They throw you a lot of excuses first, usually, but they'll go. But the question that I brought up for Nick was, is there any kind of a procedure, a policy? Is there a single person in the city that a property owner can go to say, hey, I got a problem with this contractor, and I don't know what to do, short of calling the police? And maybe that's the answer, I don't know. But what I wanted to do was throw it out in front of the committee and see if there's some direction that we need to give staff to bring some options forward about how we might in the future deal with this, because to me, this is not the way business should be conducted in Stephenville. Homeowners shouldn't have to go to somebody and say, hey, you're on my property, you didn't ask to be there to begin with, now I need you to go. That's just not the way we should be conducting business in Stephenville, and contractors should know that from the get-go, I believe. So, open it up for any input anybody has on it.
Is it the same contractor that, for multiple complaints?
No, No, the two that I've dealt with personally have been different. One of them is the driver, the group that's the Atmos contractor that's in town right now. The other one was the surface contractor, so the road surface contractor back when the Methodist branch storm, when that construction project was going on. And then obviously it's a different contractor that this lady has dealt with. So there's three different contractors that I'm aware of. And I've had to chase the driver bunch off of other people's property in our neighborhood also. And so, I don't know, just open for input. There may not be anything to do here, but
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
An easy solution may be, so all those contractors like driver, anybody that's gonna work in the public right of way has to obtain a permit from the city, and there's a process that they go through. What may be helpful is maybe we come up with a do's and don'ts information sheet based off of some of these complaints, and we can work with staff and Chief Harris's folks to come up with those. And when you sign for your permit, you're gonna sign saying that you understand the do's and don'ts. And then that would help staff on the back end if there is problems. Now, we're never gonna know about problems until people tell us, that's for sure. But we can try some, a little sterner education piece on the front end. And then if there are problems, if you guys remember, what was it, last summer, the internet
fiber optic
people,
company, yes, sir.
We ended up pulling that permit and then told the parent company that was having the job done that specific contractor was not allowed to work in Stephenville, and they were gonna have to get a new company to come in and do it, and they did. And so that would be the same scenario here if we went down that rabbit hole, but maybe something on the front end when they sign for that permit that has some spelled out, here's what you don't do, and you're gonna sign saying you understand that. Similar to our solicitation ordinance, when you go sign to be a solicitor in town, you're signing saying you understand all the rules, and that if you violate them, it can be the removal of your permit.
so, I mean, that's right there. So unless somebody has a problem, I say let's bring something forward, or
Okay.
let's see it. And go ahead.
One suggestion might be, like when we do certain things, we have to, like change zoning, et cetera, we have to notify people in certain, maybe we could, in some cases, let people know what's gonna be going on in their neighborhood too. And, here's what their contract is for, et cetera. You have complaints, here's the person you call about it. Be proactive on the front end side of it.
Yeah.
I think that should be something on the Steve
On-
Facebook page.
Maybe so.
Because, no offense, but not very many people read the paper anymore. So, they're gonna go to social media for the news and stay informed. So I think that would be the perfect way to do it.
Or the city website as well.
Right.
But that's putting the onus on the city. I don't necessarily want to do that. I want the onus to be on the contractor. The contractor needs to identify a work zone and knock doors or hang things or,
Well, that might be a way to do it, to have that.
I mean, I
And that
wouldn't
might
want
be
this.
something to add to the list of, we recommend that you do some kind of,
I know, there's a fiber guy came to my house and damaged about a $50,000 tree in my front yard. And he had no idea what the big problem here, but he knocked off the side of a tree that's about this big around. And dug up roots this big around, and he's like, what's your problem? So that is it, those are issues, they really are.
Okay, so y'all got enough to take a stab at it? All right, appreciate it, guys. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Basket?
Yes, sir. Steve might not have as many items on the list today, but we're gonna talk for a little bit. So, Steve, why don't you go and step up here and
Step up to the
I'll
plate.
start. How about that?
All right, that's a deal. That's a
All
deal.
right. So, Steve and Jason and I have been meeting and talking about basically a new zoning for the city, a high density type zoning, similar to like Northgate and College Station, where we have the area to the zoning to do retail, housing, commercial. I mean, it's kind of a, not really a free-for-all, but I mean, it's something that we've developed, we see a need for. And we have a couple areas that we think it would work real good on. But Steve, if you'll just kind of run through a little bit of this Wild West zoning we're talking about.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, done a cursory review of what College Station has in place for their mixed-use development, and probably preface that with there's probably some field work that needs to be done down in College Station, so I'll volunteer for that if you guys are serious about this. But
Obviously, you're in a national basketball or football game, right?
football. So College Station has this Northgate District 1, 2, 3, lack of a better term, seems working. They have a transition phase there with 2. So as you're closer to the university, they have different, or University Drive, they have different set of standards as they would in the transition stage and then in the deeper phase into the neighborhood. And so in the Northgate District, it's roughly 150 acres that they have set aside for this, and it is a mixed-use concept. So the first floor is all retail, and then everything above that is residential. They have certain amounts of retail space required based on which ring you are or which tier you're going to develop in. Different concept where we're looking at setbacks and right-of-way requirements, things of that nature. They actually set a maximum, so you can't be more, the retail space, for example, cannot be more than 15 feet from University Drive. They want a 10-foot sidewalk, so they have some design criteria that they place in here. They also establish permitted uses within the mixed-use district, which can range anywhere from dormitories to worship, places of worship, retail space, of course, and then multifamily for the residential component. So it's a neat concept, works very well for College Station. If you've had the opportunity to visit College Station, you see they have a lot of neat developments there. They do require parking in this mixed-use district. It's not as aggressive as some of the other parking models that we see, but they do ask that you set aside parking. So it's a neat concept. I think the challenge here will just be finding that area that we want to designate for it. We're in a great time to do that with the comprehensive plan coming to an end. We're hopefully delivering that in May of 2024. I had an update call with them today. Their future land use map that they're proposing actually has an area that's, I did some calculations on it today, roughly 100 acres in the area that we've been looking at, which correlates well with what College Station is suggesting, or what they have set aside at 150 acres. So in essence, it's a planned development, but it has some structure to it. And instead of a passive mechanism where the plan development comes to us and we listen to the concept and then we decide if we want it, we set some design standards around the mixed-use development, tell them where we want it to be, and then set items. For instance, there's no setback on the front or sides, but they want you at least within that 15-foot distance from the street. On the rear, there is a 20-foot setback requirement in this mixed-use district. So they do have some parameters in there that you have to adhere to, but it's pretty open-ended otherwise. And so obviously that could be a great catalyst to some of the development that we are hoping to see around Tarleton State. Long Harbin would be a great location. That's what we've been looking at. And so I'm kind of blabbering now, so I'll be glad to answer any questions related to that. But it's a little reluctant at first. When we first started looking at it, I thought, well, we can accomplish the same thing with PD. But now, as I get deeper into it, I think it would be a great mechanism for us to have in our toolbox. So thank you, sir.
And while looking at this, we really wanted to put it in a TERS district. So it just makes more sense for us to do that. And honestly, this would fit great on the Harbin area. But any questions for Steve at all?
Steve, have you been in contact with any of the staff members at College Station?
Reached out to College Station. We never connected. They returned my call, returned their call. We just didn't connect, so I can certainly do some more work on that. Talked to our fire chief, he's had some experience in areas like this, and, you know, when you start looking at the setbacks and the densities and things like that, the fire department starts having some concerns and some input, so we'd want to get on the front side of that as well. Mr. King suggested that we visit with, or that I visit with the fire chief, and I have. He indicated we can make it work regardless. With the equipment we have, we can get there, but definitely wants to be on the front side of this if we pursue it, so.
So
you know, we're,
without setback, I mean, is this, typically they see what, like a parking garage type structure that's utilized for parking?
Well, there are some similarities in what we're talking about to Stephenville, but there are some key differences.
Yeah.
And that is one, there is, in the middle of Northgate is a giant city-owned parking garage, which we're not gonna have or propose. So that's, I think what Steve says, you know, there's some stuff we'll have to work through design-wise on how we want it to line up and what works for here. That'll be some of that.
I just wasn't sure if this was something that came about to meet a specific developer's needs instead of having to go through the PD process. They just came up with this, so I just wasn't sure. Was this a developer's need or a need of the?
No,
No,
not
this
a
was-
specific. Some of this conversation started.
Not our, but I just was curious about their rationale behind it. That's why I guess I was
You know,
curious about the
The
city's.
mayor and I met with the city manager and the
We
mayor
went out,
in College Station.
we went to city, College Station, visited with city manager and the mayor. Spent about half a day with, no, not quite, about close to 3 or 4 hours with them. And the sole purpose started with, how does Tarleton and this College Station, not Tarleton, A&M and College Station deal with each other as far as sharing funds, as projects and so on, street construction, whatever. The city manager was adamant, College Station gets nothing from A&M's system. They don't get any money at all. So what they've done is they've worked hard to make sure they have a tax base that is, in a sense, funded by the college students. And so what they did, they started Northgate, and it's become a boom for College Station, because their tax rates, the amount of tax money they get from that, from both sales tax and ad valorem tax, is enormous. They have, in that 150 acres, there's probably, 25,000 people or something living in that area. It's huge. And so we drove through it, and it's an amazing project. The one thing that College Station did do is they have a parking problem on campus, just like this university's going to. And we've been hearing the stories about this is gonna be 25,000, 30,000 college students for us too long. And they're looking already at getting funding for next session for another dormitory. I think it's a 4 or 5-story dormitory. Well, that brings more parking and more trucks to town, et cetera, and there's no tax base that comes other than sales tax. And so our city manager and mayor highly encourage us to look at something like this. And matter of fact, the city manager said, you do something like this, I'll give you a list of builders who'll come and want to do the project. And so the idea is, and the one thing they do there, and I've already spoken with the university about it, they haven't said they'd do it, but they're interested in, is what they've done is, because the parking on campus is such an issue, the university's paying for the skyways across the street, which I think is called University Street. And so they do that crossways, and then they have bus stations, if you will, and the university provides transportation through that district, pick students up, and then those students don't get parking tickets or parking spots on campus. And so it takes care of a lot of the transportation. The university here said they would be interested in the concept of considering something like that. So I think it, in a sense, would take parking off their project, take traffic off of our roads to some degree, give us a huge retail and potential ad valorem tax. Because we're looking at projects that this could be a $50 to $100 million construction project when it's all said and done. So, you know, it's something that Jason and I mean, we just thought it was great. So I called David immediately and said, can you work on it? I think it's a real possibility. There's headaches to it, but that's why the council needs to consider it and staff give us recommendations. But I think it's a great option for the city of Stephenville.
Yeah, I really I appreciated the fact that it's a mixed-use concept similar to a PD, but they went as far as even requiring entrances on at least 2 facades. There's some development aesthetic issues or requirements in their ordinance. So they took the situation and made it fit for what they wanted to see in their city, and I think that could be a great opportunity for us as well, and not just let the developers that come to town dictate what they're gonna put on the streets for us. They don't allow parking in this area on the front side of the retail unless it's, you have to be within, you can have 2 rows of parking, but they really want the retail right next to the University Drive, which the aesthetics of that, I think, are really crisp and clean, and, it's just aesthetically pleasing when you're driving down University and you see all the businesses right there. They won't let another example is you can have 20,000 square foot of retail space, but you can't have one retailer take up more than 10,000 square foot. So they really want the diversity in the retail along the thoroughfares. So it's a neat concept.
I called one developer, or one builder who's a developer, and he said it's something that absolutely I'd be interested in doing. It's some of the same people you might be interested in. They're looking at building a convocation center and hotel, might get them something like this as well.
And I can attest, in the late '90s, Northgate was like, I was like a moth to a flame down there, so I had a little too much fun. Any other questions for Steve?
You can explain some of that?
No, I'm good. That's enough.
So, in what they've done down there, once they establish this area with the 3 rings, was there any variance allowed within that?
Well, not that I saw. Now, anything can go to the Board of Adjustments, I guess, and that's a separate mechanism for a variance, but I don't know that you can ride out the due process of asking for a variance on a land use regulation. Great question. I'd have to consult with our attorney and make sure I'm right on that, but I think you have to offer that as a means of
I guess
a
that's
variance.
what
So
I'm
that would
kinda
be the
getting at
difference between
is-
a PD and
Well,
this.
I guess that's where I'm going with it. Was it a chicken or an egg thing?
Yeah.
Would the developer bring the project, or vice versa, and they fit that? But I'm good either way. I'm not opposed to this.
Right.
I don't, but I just wasn't sure what those steps were that brought forth this. So that's just something, I guess, that I'm curious about.
But maybe if the vision is established, the developers that come in buy into that vision and want to perpetuate that without tweaking their own thing, their own way. I mean, because it would seem that if there was the availability for variance, some guy could come in and ask for the change, and first guy gets it, and then doors open.
Yes, sir, and great point. Even in our planned development district, you ask for basically variances in your concept plan and what is ultimately presented to the council, and the council either approves those concessions or variances, or we deny it. But even in the planned development mechanism, there's a way to ask not to follow the strict interpretation of the ordinances. So parking, for example, we can say that these are our parking requirements, but in a planned development, they can ask to deviate away from those parking requirements and have less than what we would normally require. Same with the mixed-use development. If it's not necessarily a planned development, I think then you allow the Board of Adjustments to make those decisions on a variance. But again, I'd need to, when we get deeper into this, consult with Mr. Thomas and make sure that's the correct mechanism, if it's not directly associated with planned development.
If it became an adopted zoning classification, any variance from that would automatically go to BOA, just like any other zoning
Right.
classification.
Well, I was just thinking if you could limit it somehow on the front end, once the vision's established for this area, what it's gonna look like, blah, blah, blah. If everybody can come in and ask for a variance, then you've distorted that vision that you started with. So is there a way to take it out? But it sounds like there isn't. There is not.
Statutorily, I think you'd always have to have the BOA option.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at it in the College Station, as you created that buy-in on that vision right off the bat. Plus, depending on what you're talking about, I mean, if it's setbacks and those kind of things,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of things to deviate from. I
Right.
mean, there was, when I was looking at some of those categories, it was front setback none, side setback none, rear setback none. I mean,
Yeah, many of
It's
the
a
requirements are
totally-
listed as a minimum. For instance, we say no higher than 35 feet on most of our developments, and on this, they say you have to be a minimum of 2 stories. So they're wanting you to go 5, 6 stories if you can. So it's just kind of a paradigm shift from what we are currently doing to what we could be doing. And I think it does give us a mechanism to try to have a little more control, even though we're opening the gate on, what those setbacks may be.
Any other questions for Steve? I don't believe we have any action required, correct?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Mr. Mayor, that concludes the Development Services Committee.
Mr. Greenhall.
All right, first thing up, discuss update of salary schedule. If you could take us through that, Jason.
Yes, sir. So, approximately 3 years ago now, is when the current salary structure was developed off of a salary survey that was done and then adopted by council. And so it's time for us to go through updating that. And so, basically, what I'd like to do is work with you as the chair of the personnel committee, and then anybody else that you want to designate. And so we'll begin to look at that. First thing we would do is look at the cities that were used, determine, do we want to continue to use those same cities, or there's some different ones we need to look at? And then we'll go collect the data. And then what I would expect over the coming months is to get all of that information pulled together, so that as we move into budget next year, we have all of that data in front of the council and staff. And so we're ready to make decisions as far as updating the salary structure to the city's pay plan.
Okay, so we'll just need to put together, just a small team of some sort.
Yes, sir.
To start digging into the old survey.
Yes, sir.
And then getting updated data on that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Does it need any action on that?
No, sir.
Here? Okay. Any questions or comments on that from the committee?
I'm sure Mr. Thurman would love to jump in and help. Considering he spent several hundred hours on the last one.
Yeah,
Are you out there, Ricky?
if we can pull him back in, yeah.
What's the timeline, Jason?
I want to have it ready by the time we start moving into heavy budget discussions in that May, June timeframe. So we're going to have to get moving.
All right, any other discussion or questions for Jason on that part? Next, consider Stephenville Fire Department, Stephenville Police Department incentive programs. Jason, if you could take us,
Yes, sir.
Through that a little
I'm
bit.
happy to begin this. And then, did Chief Isbell join us electronically? Okay. And Chief Harris is here, and Sarah's going to hand out some hard copies. So in discussion with both chiefs about concerns over recruiting and retention, for instance, looked at some numbers today from the fire department, and in the last 12 months, they've had 12 vacancies in the department, so basically a third of the fire department that's turned over. And so we just heard the information on what we want to do as far as the salary structure for all departments in the city and updating that survey. But began to work with the chiefs and Monica, hey, is there anything that could potentially be done now? Be it big, be it small. And so I asked both chiefs to look at the incentive side of their pay structure, where we pay for certifications and education and those things. And I asked them to go to the drawing board and design a program that they thought they needed for their department, and they have both done that. And then I've worked with Monica to determine, is there an amount of funding that we feel like we could add into the budget today that, one, we could afford today, but also afford tomorrow, and know that right now without having gone through the budget process for next year and looking at revenues. And so the number that Monica and I have come up with as far as funds that are available would be $100,000 that we would feel comfortable recommending to council that could be added in to police and fire total, and split that up equitably in the departments, and then work with both chiefs on kind of what they've presented here today on the best way to fund those increases that we could do now, how they could get the best bang for their buck with the programs that they're kind of pitching. And then I'll let the chiefs kind of take it from there, Mr. Chair. Chief Harris?
Sir. Mr. Mayor, distinguished members of the Personnel Committee and the City Council, a couple of comments I wanted to make. Stephenville Police Department police officers, animal control officers, and telecommunicators love protecting and serving the citizens of Stephenville and the visitors that come to Stephenville. Now, that love results in an extreme amount of dedication, hard work, and going above and beyond every single day that they come to work. So our goal as leadership with the police department with this proposal is to further that love and dedication to the city of Stephenville, further their employees' educational growth and development, and especially increase both recruiting and longevity, and I emphasize longevity, of the members of the Stephenville Police Department. The components in this proposal, you'll see you have in your packet on the left-hand side, you will have a draft policy. That is in a policy format of the Stephenville Police Department. It is completely draft. And on the right side is an employee list with their current licensing, education, and certifications. So the three components of this proposal, the first part of that is the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement professional licenses. All police officers in the state of Texas start out with basic, and then with years of service and further education go to intermediate, advanced, and master peace officer licenses. The second part of this proposal is advanced accredited college education, whether that be an associate's, bachelor's, master's, or a degree there. I didn't add doctorate in there, and I can explain that later if needed to. And the third part of this proposal is specialized certification pay. Whereas there are a myriad of certificates available for police officers, and there is a list, a not all-inclusive list, on the second page in the bottom of that proposed policy. But that the proposal for here would be $500 per certificate, up to a maximum of 6 of those that we would compensate those officers or employees for, that result in them going above and beyond for the city of Stephenville and the police department, whether that be as a SWAT team member, which we serve on a regional SWAT team, whether that means they're a firearms instructor, which 4 times a year, no matter the weather, we're on the gun range at a minimum for hours and days preparing and training all of the remainder members of the departments, and so forth on. As we go into combined dispatch, our telecommunicators will become emergency medical dispatchers. In other words, be able to take the call just as our county dispatchers do now, but then be able to walk the caller through emergency medical techniques that may possibly save their lives before the first responders arrive. Just 3 examples there. All of the factors that I have just mentioned to you play into the proper and correct decision-making skills of members of the Stephenville Police Department. Whether they're in dispatch, whether they're in animal control, whether they're out in the field as a patrol officer. In addition, these proposals for this particular aspect of police salary compensation, just this area, brings us into the competitive market, which we are seriously behind in that aspect. And I can talk about that or answer any questions related to that. So in the first part of the proposal, with that license, it is $1,200 per year per license, cumulative up to the 4, which would be a total of $4,800 per year for your professional state of Texas licenses. The second aspect of it, whether you have an associate, bachelor, or master's degree, you would receive $1,200 per year for that accredited college education, and then the certificate pay up to 6 certificates at $500 per professional certificate. And again, those are the special skills that go above and beyond. Be happy to take any of your questions or explain anything further.
And this list that's on the right, these are the ones that are, this is what is currently
Yes,
in
sir.
effect, correct?
Yes, sir. For those particular, for peace officers, animal control officers, and telecommunicators, which is the majority of the 64 members of the department. There are 2 part-time and 3 other employees that this would not apply to.
So like
Yes, sir.
The certificates, does, I guess the question would be if it's applicable to the job that they have. So like if they have a certificate that's unrelated to what they're doing in the job description, would that be
No,
something
sir.
they would be compensated for?
No, sir. So if it was something that did not add to the Stephenville Police Department, to the city of Stephenville, to the betterment of the department, to enhance that decision-making skills, that education, then it would not be compensated.
But all the certificates are relevant to every job description?
Yes, sir. And so you
So
have your.
regardless of,
I'm sorry.
like, what they do,
Correct.
all certificates are applicable to all staff members? Or,
Of the police department, almost all. I mean, there's a little bit of variance with the telecommunicators and the animal control officers. And then we have actually have 5 support staff, 3 full-time and 2 part-time.
but if they, so if they took a certificate and received that, it was specific to their job or the potential for promotion?
Both of those are, let me give you an example of that related to it, is if, there's thousands of things you can get out there, certificates, but if it is just something that looks good on the resume and doesn't give back to the department in a sense that we're gonna ask you to go above and beyond. Give you, like I said, the SWAT team, you have to pass advanced physical techniques aspects. We have one who's a sniper, so you have to spend an immense amount of time behind a rifle and hopefully never ever have to make those or utilize those skills, but you're going to train immensely above and beyond what it takes to be a police officer. A police officer takes their calls, which we need that, works those accidents, writes those reports, conducts those investigations. Every bit of this is above and beyond that.
Chief, I think a better, for instance, you have crash reconstruction.
Yes, sir.
So say we're paying you for crash reconstruction today, and then a year from now you promote to lieutenant, and you're not out doing crash reconstruction anymore. Are we gonna keep paying you?
No, sir. If you're not participating in, if you're not doing that, we are not going
I think
to.
that's the question.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood that.
Yes, sir.
So Chief,
No.
when you have a certificate, do you have to, how often does that certificate have to be renewed?
So it depends on which one those are. For example, for the SWAT team, that's every 6 months.
So I've seen some person here has got 6 certificates.
I'm sorry?
There's one officer has 6 certificates on here.
Yes, sir. He retires in May. He's announced his retirement. And so it's,
I'm not criticizing, I'm saying that's a lot, that's.
that's,
that's
almost
above and
30 years
beyond.
of dedication to
Yeah,
get to
that's what
that.
I'm saying, I mean,
Yes, sir.
that's a lot.
Yes, sir.
I want to remind the committee, while we get down into details on both of these, I am not asking, nor do I want you to pass these or approve these programs tonight, because can't fund either one of them right now. So I don't want to lock them into stone. Basically, what I want to look for tonight is have the discussion about the direction these are headed. Because I think in some cases, there's some more conversation that has to be had on some of these. But what I'm gonna wanna look for tonight is, do you agree with the premise that the program needs to be improved? And then, are we on the right track with what both chiefs have kind of laid in front of you? And then the approval I'm gonna be, or the recommendation to council that I would be looking for tonight is that, addition of $100,000 into police and fire to fund as best as we can based on the direction both chiefs are headed. So that's, again, but
And you're talking about that 100,000 start, that you would decide where to put that for each one?
if the committee approves that tonight, what I would do before we get to council is work with both chiefs on how specifically would apply those dollars so that when we got to the council meeting, we would have that in front of you on exactly where that $100,000.
And this is money that we already have, and we're wanting to allocate it to these two programs at the next meeting, and it
Yes.
takes effect.
Yes, sir.
These be out of the Public Works Department's existing budget, or?
Not,
do they need to
not
move?
Public Works.
So what I did is I looked at the,
I mean, sorry.
I looked
We're
at the
taking your
general.
money, Nick.
Take it from Nick. Get it out of here.
You did say
Change
that
order.
you saved in your budget a couple of times, so why
Sorry.
can't we just?
Public safety.
So I looked at the general fund budget, in salaries that we had and things like the sick leave buyback and the one-time pay adjustments and some other areas where, two of them we know monies, we've already paid out what we're gonna pay for this year, there'll be no more. There's some other stuff like in the deferred comp, we've looked at that of how many people are actually participating. So we would reallocate from the whole general fund, to cover this.
Got it.
All right. Any other questions for the chief? And then we need to hear from
Are these-
Chief
oh, I
Isbell as
guess-
well.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
So this gets you in terms of the advanced pay, certifications, this is comparable to,
Departments in
Okay.
the state of Texas? Sorry, I didn't
Okay.
mean to interrupt.
no, departments in the state of Texas that are similar in, that are dealing with the same kind of competitive nature.
Yes,
that we're
sir.
dealing with.
Absolutely, would not, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump to your question there. Brownwood, Granbury, Mineral Wells, our region, this area, obviously, we can't compete with the Metroplex, with Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, that doesn't compare to that. What you'll see in a general summary of this, most departments will do one or two pieces of this. We would be cutting edge and be one of the few if we were able to do this and do all three at the same time. And so, now your some of your larger departments do that, but not many are able to fund all three.
All three.
And so, and the certificate pay and the education pay are very comparable to our region.
Okay.
Almost identical. The certificate pay is not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief Harris.
Yes, sir.
We need to hear from Chief Isbell now, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mayor, Council, Committee. Thank you for allowing me to promote it this evening. Without repeating everything that Chief Harris said, it's basically a duplicate on the fire side. If I could just add, this is a tool that helps us create the future of our leadership within the departments. It lets us kind of guide the direction we want to go in professional development in the services we're delivering. It also lets us build the next fire chief, the next assistant chief, all of that leadership that needs that professional education, higher education. Today, we've lost, like Mr. King said, we've lost a third of our department over the past 12 months. And it's very impactful because that was years of specific specialized training. Now, we bring firefighters, paramedics, or EMTs in, but through the years, they get additional training, or they on themselves bring on additional training that takes them to another level. And we've lost a lot of that, and we're having to build it back up. And this also is a tool to help us, hopefully, to retain those skills from seeking that in another department. Yeah, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, like I said, without repeating. Ours is basically the same, for the same reasons, the same distribution type as Chief Harris said.
All right, any questions for Chief Isbell on their plan? All right, thank you very much, Chief. Hope you get feeling better.
very much.
We appreciate you not coming in.
Yeah. All right, any other questions or discussion, on the program as we want to move forward with it? Any questions for Jason?
No, so you want a recommendation
Yes.
for the 100,000?
Yes, sir.
So I make the motion to recommend to council reallocating from the general fund $100,000 towards the incentive programs presented tonight in committee.
Moving second, we recommend to council addition of the $100,000 for the incentive pay programs for the police and fire departments. Any discussion? Not, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And it passed unanimously. We will recommend to council addition of the $100,000 for the incentive pay to police department and fire department. That's all for my committee.
Thank you. Well, that's the last on our agenda for the committee meetings at 6:45. We're going to adjourn that meeting. And so we can get going. We're going to immediately then, I'm going to convene us into the city council work session. One item on the agenda tonight.
Yes, sir. That agenda item requires us to move.
Okay, so we're going to into work session first.